Today, I'm going to talk to you about why I think there's a possibility that the N64 version of Goldeneye might appear on the Nintendo Switch. But before we get into that, I need to kind of address the main reason why it might not be on the Switch first. So, basically, the company Rare from the UK that made Banjo-Kazooie and Cameo and various other, big games, they were acquisitioned by Microsoft, and they made Goldeneye for the N64, as well as Banjo-Kazooie and a few other games. And the thing with that is, when was the last time you saw a game by Rare, an original game? It kind of feels like Microsoft have bought them out, or maybe they've just taken them on. I don't really know the ins and outs of it. The only thing I can remember that they did was they added Conker, the character, to Project Spark on the Xbox One, and they brought out a Rare collection of their games on the Xbox One as well. And before that, they did Conker's Live and Reloaded and a couple of other bits and pieces like Cameo. But at the end of the day, I don't know what their association is with Microsoft and whether Microsoft own them outright or what. But at the same time, Microsoft license out some of their content and their technology to PlayStation, for example. For example, Microsoft now own Minecraft, yet they've licensed out Minecraft to loads of different platforms, including PlayStation and Nintendo. So this is the interesting conundrum. The thing is, it all comes down to business. If you were Microsoft, wouldn't you, if you owned half the rights to Goldeneye and Nintendo still owned some rights to it, so neither of you could distribute the game, and Nintendo's coming out with a new console, yes, it's competition, but I don't think Microsoft would see it as a direct competition because Nintendo aren't directly trying to compete with, every facet of the sort of tech spec console race. So, wouldn't it make sense from a business point of view if you were Microsoft, if Nintendo said, hey, you own the majority of the rights to GoldenEye, but it was on our platform, it's known for Nintendo, we want to sell it on our platform. How about we do a deal and you get a bunch of money while we put in a bunch of work and we get all of the sales, yet you just sit there pretty. All you've got to do is sign a contract and you're getting money coming in from it, and it's advertising Rare, which is a company that you own that can still produce products. So that's the main sort of elephant in the room out of the way. It's a possibility. I wouldn't count it out because of Microsoft's dealings with other games, like I say, with Minecraft. So, on to why I think this might actually happen. So, you may have noticed, I freely admit and have done on my channel, the last time I bought a Nintendo console was the GameCube. I was really into Nintendo back in the day. I played the NES, SNES, I played I had the N64 and the GameCube, and I was really into that generation, like the GameCube and the N64. And I think the Switch is bringing a lot of that generation back. The people who didn't really care that it wasn't, 100% tech spec amazing, but at the same time really enjoyed the games and the brand and everything else, and they have fond memories of that era because I think they're trying to recreate a new era in that form, as it were. They're kind of looking back on the success of the N64 and the GameCube, and yeah, sure, it wasn't hugely successful, but in retrospect, a lot of people liked it. So back to my point, with the Wii and the Wii U, on the Wii, they had this thing called a virtual console, which most of you probably know about, but some of you might not. And it's essentially, you would go into a menu on your Wii, and you'd be able to play a couple of select N64 games and other console games. And on the Wii U, they had a Wii U... Oh god, it's very convoluted. They had a Wii virtual console where you could play Wii games on the Wii U. Now, this virtual console idea was very convoluted and messy, and you had to go inside a virtual console to play another console's games, and it was a way of backwards compatibility, but at the same time, you still had to buy the games again, download them. And, okay, fair enough, that's a mess, and everyone keeps talking about the Wii Virtual Console, the N64 Virtual Console and stuff being on the Nintendo Switch. But if you look at what they've done with the Nintendo Switch and how they've listened to what people want, they've tried to go in a new direction. They've tried to make it... Essentially, they've modernized Nintendo, and they've tried to keep the essence of Nintendo, but at the same time, changing everything to give us what we want, reach that target audience of, people between the age of, say, 15 and 40, rather than people of the age of, say, 3 years old to grandmas, and trying to broadly fit everybody in. And the thing is, all these changes that they're making, their stylistic changes, their technical changes, everything that they're saying, like Reggie Fils-Aimé, who's head of Nintendo America, he said, we're listening to people, we know what they want, we know they want this, we know they want that, and it really does seem like they're making the right choices at the moment. And I've got a feeling that they'll do away with the Virtual Console, because they've already said that the new way of downloading digital games will essentially mean that, and this is unconfirmed at the moment, they said that they'll essentially mean if you buy a game on, say, the Wii U and download it, you will be able to then go onto your Switch and download the same game, because it'll all be part of the same account. So kind of like how the PS3 and the PS4 work. If you download a game that's cross-buy on the PlayStation 4, you can then go on your PlayStation 3 and download it, or your Vita if it's applicable. And that's how I think they're going to approach the Nintendo Switch. I think instead of having this stupid virtual console thing, they're basically going to allow you to download digital games from various different console generations, from the NES, SNES, N64. There's a lot of rumor about the GameCube games being brought into this, and it's entirely possible when you look at what PlayStation's done with their PlayStation 2 games and Neo Geo and stuff. And we've also had it confirmed that if you get the new online service for the Nintendo Switch, every month you will get an NES or SNES game that you basically get to keep for the month, and then it runs out and you can buy it if you want to. Let's face it, a month is more than enough time to play an NES game. Now, what's interesting about this is that's confirmed. And that means that this whole idea that digital games from various different console generations will be available on the Switch, just to download on a virtual store, just like the PlayStation Store or the Xbox One store. And one really interesting part of this is that they say some games, those old games, will support online multiplayer, and we'll get to that in a second. But back to the N64. So, presumably, if Microsoft collaborate with a license to get a Goldeneye on the Nintendo Switch, and they're able to sell it, it will be on the Nintendo Switch digital game store. Now, they've already converted a bunch of N64 games, but they're all first-party titles. So they're all sort of like, Mario 64 and Zelda and stuff like that Nintendo have made themselves. So if Microsoft give the go-ahead, I'm sure it's actually doable that you can put an N64 game as a digital game to download and play across your Nintendo platforms. So we know it's doable because it's been done already. And here's where I come back to the multiplayer. Because if they've got these digital games, these games that have never been played online before, and they're saying that you can play online multiplayer, imagine how much of an attraction it will be to have the N64 Goldeneye available for people to play online. Think about it, back in the day, back in the sort of mid to late 90s, Goldeneye was amazing to play couch co-op with. Back in the day, that was the Call of Duty of its time. In fact, it probably pioneered a lot of things for Call of Duty. And yes, okay, the graphics are crap in comparison to today, but they're not bad. I mean, they're playable, and there's a lot of nostalgia about this game. There's a lot of enjoyment. I mean, in terms of the way games are made, they were really thought through back then. And so the gameplay is really smooth and brilliant. And if you ever played GoldenEye, you'll know that. It's really, really well put together, and the mechanics are brilliant. It's very smooth to play, and it's just fun to play against people. Now, if you grew up and you're in your mid to late 20s or your early 30s, mid 30s, maybe even late 30s, you probably played the N64 and have loads of nostalgia for it and loads of nostalgia for GoldenEye, and you're that target audience. You are the people who they would market this to. But also, a lot of younger people who are now currently sort of in their teens, early, mid, late 20s, they are really into their video games, and a lot of people are into retro video games. And you might have played, you might be 23 and like your older brother or sister or your dad or your mum showed you the N64 because they used to play it, and you might be into it as well. So loads of people have played GoldenEye, loads of people have played the N64. It's a big thing. People love retro games now, and younger people are smarter now, so the younger you are, the more likely you are these days to have checked out stuff like the N64. So there's still a huge market for GoldenEye on the N64. And imagine how many people, I mean, regardless of whether you personally like GoldenEye on the N64, imagine how many people will actually play it online if it becomes available on the Nintendo Switch digital shop or store, whatever you want to call it. Think about it. It would be huge. So why wouldn't they want to make money off that? Both Microsoft and Nintendo. And like I said, I'm not 100% sure who owns the rights to everything in regards to Rare. I don't know if Microsoft have let Rare go and they're their own entity, or whether Microsoft still own them. But either way, it's a cash cow. It's a let's sign this contract and get a bunch of money. It's hardly going to sort of like affect Xbox and PC gaming sales by selling GoldenEye on the Nintendo Switch, is it really? So yeah, it's entirely possible. And the thing about GoldenEye was it was such a well-rounded game, and it's widely considered one of the best movie tie-in games of all time, because movie games have had a history of being up and down, and most of the time down. But GoldenEye was so true to the movie, and although it didn't follow everything exactly to the movie, it was true to the characters, it was true to the music, it was true to the atmosphere. It really encompassed the feel and the experience of the movie. And again, James Bond's a big franchise, and so is GoldenEye's a big movie, and it was iconic, and so was the game. So I can really see this being a possibility, and I would not discount it at all. And like I say, they've already got N64 games available on virtual consoles on the Wii and the Wii U. It's a distinct possibility. I think the main hurdle there is if they wanted to do this, they totally could technically. However, I think it all comes down to who owns the rights and who will release the rights to make some money. But at the end of the day, like I said, signing a piece of paper and then getting a check every month saying, hey, we've just sold 1 million units of GoldenEye and here's your 60% of the profit, why wouldn't they do that? Like I said, it's not going to affect Microsoft's sort of landscape of selling games on the Xbox One and on PCs. It's just not going to make a dent in that. It's not like their direct competition. It's a whole other animal. So there you go. They're my thoughts, feelings on GoldenEye, the N64 version being put onto the Nintendo Switch digital marketplace. I think if they brought this out I don't think they will have the remake version of GoldenEye they did for the Wii on there. They might have that as well, but they won't overly sell the idea of it, because this is the definitive version, the original. And the reason they remade that game on the Wii is basically because they couldn't put the original on there. And I think times have changed. I think the landscape of gaming has changed. The competition is different now. And I think what they're doing with the Nintendo Switch is very different to what the other consoles are doing. And I think that there's a distinct possibility that whoever has the go-ahead to say, yes, you can do this, Nintendo, will probably just take the money and run. So there you go, guys. Thank you very much for watching.